want to remind people, this Brighton team hadn't won at home in any competition since the 9th of November. It's getting slowly, progressively worse. That second half performance is the worst I've seen under Maresca.
You stop Cole Palmer, you stop Chelsea, and that can't be the MO for a team that's trying to finish in the Champions League spots. I expect us to improve year on year, and if we finish below 6th, then I don't know how Maresca keeps the job beyond the summer.
But the owners have shown, if things don't work and they believe they're not going to get better, they will get rid of you. I had Paul Elliott alongside me when I broke into Chelsea's first team, right? What a model to play alongside. And he took me under his wing. No one does that here. We got Reece James.
When you are the best player, you are going to be criticised the most, even if your performances are better than everybody else's.
It's actually been, we've got our Chelsea back, so we want our Chelsea back in the space of probably only 3 months.
The first thing he's got to do is find who's playing up top, because that position's become a major, major issue. I wonder whether playing Neto down the middle might be something you think about. But these next 3 games, we've got to pick up a minimum, in my world, a minimum of 7 points.
Welcome to another episode of Inside Chelsea, the show for Chelsea fans by Chelsea fans. I'm Olivia Buzaglo and I'm joined by former Chelsea defender Jason Cundy and broadcaster and lifelong Chelsea fan Kweku Afari. I feel like we've done the same show for the last 6 weeks now and it's just not getting any better. Now we're sat here coming off the back of, I thought that the defeat in the FA Cup against Brighton was bad, but a 3-0 defeat in the Premier League is even worse, Jace. Mm-hmm. I mean, we started well the first 20 minutes, but overall I would say that second half performance is probably the worst I have seen under Enzo Maresca at Chelsea.
Yeah, I think most Chelsea fans watching that game will agree with that. I watched the extended highlights earlier this morning and I put myself through it, but I just want to see, because I've done the comms for Chelsea TV and I remember thinking, actually, we started quite well, but I wanted to refresh my memory. And actually we did. Down the right-hand side, Noni was linking up with Gusto. There was a couple of half chances and I thought we controlled the game. I thought things were pretty comfortable. Then we conceded the goal. Trev will be disappointed. Come a long way, that ball. Brilliant goal from Matoma. Take nothing away from that. It will be in the goal of the season. No question about it. It's a brilliant take. And even then, we had a couple of half moments. Neto had one. I remember Gusto getting down that right-hand side again. When we conceded the second goal, after that, I can't defend our performance after that second goal. That is way below anything that Chelsea fans should expect, because there was a lack of, I think we said afterwards, a lack of desire, a lack of, all of the things that are a prerequisite that you should have to go and play a game of football. Closing down, energy, desire, fight, work rate, all of those things, they drifted out of our game. And in the end, it was a bit of a sorry sight.
I mean, you spoke about desire there, Jay. Enzo Maresca came out after the game and said, we need to talk about the desire. You have 14 games to go. You can go 1 point to third with a win tonight. I mean, Kweku, they shouldn't need that to go, oh yeah, well, we're close to third, so that should be the desire. That's inexcusable to not have... When your manager is coming out and questioning your desire, where do you go from there? Yeah,
but the onus is obviously on the players. They go out on the pitch and they are the ones that we require to get the results on the pitch. But also the onus is on the manager. You've had this, I think the biggest indictment on Maresca for these results is that you had a chance to look at Brighton the week before. Any manager worth his salt will be able to figure out what they do best, what they do worse, and exploit that. And he didn't manage to do that. The result was worse after having a chance to look at him. I've come here with a Mickey Mouse haircut. That was a Mickey Mouse performance. That was a Mickey Mouse performance. One of the worst performances of this season. And as a Chelsea fan, where you've gone out of cup competitions, to perform like that in the league, where you know that it's in your hands, we're sitting in the Champions League spot going into that game, playing before everybody else, by the way, on a Friday night. What a way to ruin your weekend. And Jace has pointed out the tactical reasons as to why we weren't successful. But you are right to read out that Maresca quote. There wasn't a desire there. And after they scored their second goal, we didn't show anything in the second half. So very, very concerning times at Chelsea. I just don't know how things turn around.
So this has been a gradual decline. You said there's 6 weeks. You're right, it is about 6 weeks. Boxing Day, we picked up 8 points in 8 games in the league, okay? We have won 2, drawn 2, lost 4. This has been a bit of a tailspin. And culminating with the second half performance, that it's getting slowly, progressively worse. That second half performance is the worst I've seen under Maresca. And it is concerning that you can't get away from it, because You go back just before Christmas, Liv, and if we got a victory away at Everton, which is a long time ago now, we'd have gone above Liverpool. Granted, they'd have had 2 games in hand, but now we are 17 points off Liverpool. That drop-off is unbelievable. This is just before Christmas, 17 points.
17 points off Liverpool.
Okay?
In 6 weeks.
So that drop-off is dramatic. Liverpool, look, they're the best side in the country, at the top of the table for a reason. But these next 4 games are crucial because we've got games we should win at home. Southampton, Leicester. Villa away at the weekend, then Arsenal, which with bookends, both those 4 games there. We have to beat. We've got to get something out against Villa. They're not brilliant. We've got to get something out of Villa. Have to beat Southampton, have to beat Leicester. And let's be honest, against Arsenal right now, the way we're playing, I wouldn't put a pound of Cundy money to get anything out of that game. But these next 3 games, we've got to pick up a minimum, in my world, a minimum of 7 points.
Do we pick up a minimum of 7 points?
I think the Villa game will be tough. If we don't beat Southampton, we don't beat Leicester.
Then what?
Fans are already starting to turn. But if we don't get 3 points in both of those games, then people will really turn because Southampton are one of the worst teams the Premier League's ever seen. And this Leicester team, despite the fact that they looked okay against Arsenal on the weekend, they are relegation fodder as well. The Villa game is the interesting one because Villa have not been in the best form. Last 7 games, they've only won 3 of them in all competitions. Granted, they've had some big results in the Champions League, but this is a Villa team that can be got at. And Chelsea's best performance this season, granted it was at home, was against Aston Villa.
Yeah.
And so when you've got that record against a team that is a good team, I feel like those players can take confidence into it. Right now, and again, nobody's going to cry for Chelsea because of how big the squad is. We are going into these games with injuries. We haven't got out-and-out number 9. Madueke came off on the weekend. We have got players missing, and so maybe that will help Maresca in terms of identifying his starting 11, but we go into that game with a weakened team, and there's no guarantee that we get 7 points out of those 3 games. I would like it, Jace, but I don't know going to Villa Park if we can guarantee we're going to get a point or even 3.
Has to be a minimum of 6. Like, it has to be.
Yeah.
You cannot justify not picking up 3 points at home against Southampton and Leicester. Jace, do you think there is a question mark about the players not playing for Maresca? Is there a question mark around that? Or is it just maybe desire within themselves?
The second half performance is concerning for everyone because of how easy we've become to play against. We are so easy. Just want to remind people, this Brighton team hadn't won at home in any competition since the 9th of November. They played Chelsea twice, they pick up 2 victories, okay? They hadn't won the last 2 games. In those last 2 games, on aggregate, they got beat 8-0. They play against Chelsea, and all of a sudden they're scoring goals, keeping clean sheets. What concerns me right now is stop Palmer, stop Chelsea. The way Mitoma and Minter were dropping it out wide in those wide areas to stop Noni early on, Neto in those first exchanges. The Neto went to the right, then we had Jadon on the left. There was no creativity. There was no going past them after the first 25 minutes. And we're easy. We're an easy team to stop to play. We're very easy to score against. And that combo, it's a bad combo right now. And at the back, we know we're going to concede. And I think Brighton Hertzler went there saying, if we keep a clean sheet, we win this game. We never shot on target. And I used to sit here and I used to moan about the chances that we would miss in games that we couldn't get the second or the third goal. That would be my big gripe in the first third of the season. The middle third of the season is now, as we've gone through that, I'm now sitting here saying, we're not creating chances to score. That is far worse.
It feels like you're saying, yeah, when we went 1-0 up, we were vulnerable. But now it's, even if we go 1-0 up, we're still vulnerable, Kweku. But when we go 1-0 down, we're vulnerable as well. So it's like we can't really win. Just feels like it's a lose-lose. No matter what happens, we score, we concede first, we're always going to lose the game.
Yeah, no, right now, it feels like all hope is lost. And I think what Chelsea fans are trying to latch onto is the fact that last season, around this time, we went on a run under Pochettino. But I just don't see it at the moment with this squad. I see, especially in the second half, I saw players just, not even the fact that they lost their heads just weren't in it. They just weren't there. And it was
they
very,
lost belief,
very...
didn't they?
Pardon?
They lost belief.
Yeah, they lost belief. They lost belief. And maybe that comes from a lack of experience in terms of people haven't been in these situations before. And we're going to speak later on about why we've got a lack of experience in this team. But there is nobody to pick this side up. And like you say, you stop Cole Palmer, you stop Chelsea. And that can't be the MO for a team that's trying to finish in the Champions League spots. And I defended Maresca when he played down, we're not in a title race, because we weren't, and evidently we're not. Look at where we're at right now, we're 17 points off of Liverpool, who are going to win the title. But when you're asked about finishing or qualifying for the Champions League, and you play that down and say that wasn't the goal, that wasn't the remit from the owners, where we know that the top 5 teams will qualify for the Champions League, there's a 99% chance of that happening. You're saying that the remit's not to finish in the top 5. Where did we finish last season? 6th, and Pochettino lost his job. So you're telling me that you're not good enough to improve on what we did last year? Then I don't think you're going to be in a job long term. Not me calling for Maresca to have the sack, but as a Chelsea fan that I adhere to standards, I expect us to improve year on year. And if we finish below 6th, then I don't know how Maresca keeps the job beyond the summer.
What do you make, Jace? I mean, Kweku, you make a great point, and I think most Chelsea fans will probably agree with you in that sense. What did you make of his comments saying that, shouldn't be finishing? I don't have to finish in the top 4. That was never the aim. But given the start of the season, of course, that's where we should be aiming.
Right. So I felt we overachieved at the beginning.
Yeah.
There could be an element of picking up off the back of last season. As I said there, we lost at home to Wolves, and then we went through the rest of that season losing only one more game in the league. That was away at Arsenal, 5-0. Going back to that point, because that really was the reason we finished 6th, Thiago Silva was involved in a lot of those games. A lot of those games. And you fast forward now a year, and you go away at Brighton, you get beat 3-0. You're looking around. Wouldn't it be great if you've got that kind of character in and around that Chelsea side? I think Maresca done well early part of the season. He picked up off the back of good results. There was a feel-good factor around Chelsea, believe it or not, even though it was a pretty average season. We secured Europa League football had Man United not won the FA Cup. So we got Conference League football. Going into Christmas, everyone was happy, really happy. Coming out of Christmas and going now into what feels like it's going to be Easter soon. This back end of this last third of the season, things have got to improve because it's so condensed, we might find ourselves in a position where we finish in the bottom half of the table. And you look at the table and how tight it is. Yeah. If this carries on, it's not unrealistic to think that potentially could happen.
Is he a victim of his own success then, Kweku? Because like Jay says, at the start of the season, we were exceeding expectations. There was no one, apart from me, I said we'd finish in the top 4. But there was not a lot of people, I think that was me being slightly optimistic, but a lot of people said Chelsea 8th, 9th, 10th, that was sort of where we were going to finish. So do you think that is a point he is victim of his own success because of how we started the season?
Yeah, so say he would have started the season really poorly and we would have picked up results maybe around November, December time, and this is us on the ascendancy, then the view of it is very different. Think about after the Spurs game where we were feeling as Chelsea fans, we thought we were right in the mix, and I know that we were all downplaying being in the title race, but in the back of our heads we're like, maybe, if things go away, but maybe you are right in terms of him being the victim of his own success, but unfortunately, as a Chelsea manager, more than any other club, it's results dependent. As Chelsea fans, if we're being honest, we do not care about the performances. It's all about results. That's why managers who play maybe not the most attractive and maybe a little bit more pragmatic football in Jose Mourinho, Thomas Tuchel, Antonio Conte, we loved because it was about the results. And as a Chelsea manager, you can play as great football and as possession-based football as you like. If you're not getting results, the fans will turn. And we're seeing that right now. Not getting results and the fans have turned.
This happened last season. Enzo Maresca has only been a manager, obviously second to Pep Guardiola, but only been a manager for one season in the Championship. And when you speak to a lot of football fans, it's worrying hearing that we all saw it with Leicester last season. They were so brilliant for the first part of the season and they literally fell over the line. And the only reason they fell over the line was because the teams below them weren't consistent enough. But they weren't, the second half of the season, they were really, really poor. So is it going to get any better, Kweku? Can you see it getting any better?
Well, that's why the gloss came off of Maresca, right? When we were looking for a new manager and then it was down to the final two, and apparently it was Thomas Frank and it was Enzo Maresca, Chelsea fans weren't enamoured because if you talk to any Leicester fan, they would say at the back end of the season, they fell off a cliff and he was very stubborn, didn't really endear himself to fans. And by the time that he eventually did leave Leicester, no Leicester fan was crying the fact that he'd left and joined Chelsea. And so, you can maybe compare it to last season, but it's a huge step up, right? This is his only his third job in management. I know he had a little stint in Italy, but it didn't go well. He lost his job. And this is a man that he's getting used to Premier League football. The Championship and the Premier League is very, very different. And in his first year, if we're being objective, he's done a decent job. But we are Chelsea Football Club and we expect excellence. And right now, you're not delivering that. So there's no wonder why Chelsea fans are moaning.
Jace, do you have any doubts over Enzo Maresca as Chelsea manager?
It's a difficult club to manage.
Yeah, and probably the most difficult club to manage.
It's an incredibly difficult club to manage because the upheaval this club has endured over the last, is it 3 years now? Yeah, 3 years ago.
3 years.
You know, you go what happened in Russia and Ukraine, that was the beginning, around about now. And the football club has gone from being, it was a very stable football club, even though the managers would come and go a bit like a revolving door. It's always felt, it's a little bit, even though the new ownership has come in, it always felt like that. And the owners have shown, if things don't work and they believe they're not going to get better, they will get rid of you. Potter is the perfect example of that. If things don't go well, Poch done OK towards the end of the season. I do believe that there was an issue about the Club World Cup. He had a year left in his contract and they wanted the next manager to go in and manage in the Club World Cup. That was why they wanted a bit more of a permanent manager. But football's a results-driven industry. I don't care who you are. People talk about Ruben Amorim at Manchester United about his job. My God, he's only been there 6 weeks, 7, whatever it is. He's had 12 games, I think. People are talking about that. Under no illusions, this is professional football at the highest level. And if these results continue, Maresca knows that. He's been involved in football long enough. Inevitably, his job will be called into question. And that's the way it has always been and always will be.
Yeah. You mentioned experience, Jace. On TNT's coverage of the Brighton win against us on Friday night, he said, I'll read out some of the quotes that he said.
Who's he?
Joe Cole.
Oh, Joe Cole.
This is what Joe Cole said on the broadcast. He said, you can get all the data you want of a 21-year-old that will predict he will be this at 24, but there's a process between 21 and 24. He'll have to learn every single game. I know from my experience playing with experienced players around me as a young man was invaluable. And moments like the Brighton game where you need those experienced guys around you. I said it from the very start of this ownership, you have to have experienced players. I mean, he goes on to talk a whole lot. And I don't know if it's questioning the Chelsea ownership now, but whose fault is this, Jace, that we are in the position we're in? Ownership, it feels like, we've had I think Ben Jacobs on the show before, and he's coming up later as well, to talk about the sort of rivalry it feels like between the two, Blue Co and Clear Lake. And it's just, how have we got to this position, and how do we get out of it when we do have no experience on the pitch? Do they have to change the way that they are thinking and the way that they have planned and built this squad together if we are to move forward and actually go on to compete at the highest level for the biggest trophies? Surely something has to change here, Jace.
Well, we had this conversation before. When the new ownership came in, they brought in Koulibaly, they brought in Aubameyang, they brought in Sterling.
Yeah.
Okay? They already had Ben Chilwell, vastly experienced. They already had Thiago Silva. There was experience in and around that squad. Then there was a shift in plan and about identifying young, up-and-coming, potentially promising talent. And that's the route that the club have gone down. They're giving long contracts on medium to low wages, so that the contracts are stacked. These players aren't on £250,000 a week.
Yeah.
They're on longer contracts on wages that give them over a longer period. I'm not smart or clever enough to tell you why they do that. Simon Jordan will tell you and Ben Jacobs will tell you. But there is a reason behind that. There is a business sense behind that. That's the model that we've gone down. Inevitably, this conversation will come up because we aren't a side stacked with John Terry, Thiago Silva, Marcel Desailly, Didier Drogba. The players that you'd look around. When you think about Ryan Bertrand playing the Champions League final, he's got Ashley Cole behind him. He's got Didier up front. He's got Frank inside him. Right? That was his debut in Champions League football. Don't have that. And that model that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. You've got players like Levi Colwill learning on the job. You've got players like, Badia Shield. Even when you go through some of the players that we've signed for lots of money, the Netos this one, we're not talking about experienced players here. We're talking about young potential. And the problem you've got with potential is it takes some time to realise. And that's what Joe Cole's talking about. I had Paul Elliott alongside me when I broke into Chelsea's first team, right? And Paul Elliott, let me tell you now, what a model to play alongside. What a man. And I used to look up to him and he'd guide me through the games, talk to me in training, talk to me before the games. And he took me under his wing. No one does that here. We got Reece James. Reece coming back for injury. Hope he stays fit. But this squad, we are the youngest squad by, I think, some distance. Premier League winning squads is something like 27 to 28, the average. We're 2.5 years behind that to win the Premier League. So we're still that young team. How it changes can only one way live, and that's if the sporting directors, Egbali, Todd Bowley, they decide this is going to be a route we're going to go down. But when you buy experience, you pay more money for it. And then it goes back to the model I think that they've adopted.
Look at the last time Chelsea won a major trophy, which is the Champions League. I said before, don't count Super Cup, don't count the other things that you get on top when you win these trophies, the Club World Cup as well. You had Thiago Silva, Azpilicueta, N'Golo Kante, Jorginho, players that have not just won stuff on the club level, but international level as well. Giroud. These are World Cup winners. These are the winners of the Euros. These are players that have seen it all and done it all and won it all. And for Chelsea, we have to accept that we haven't got that experience, and so we are going to suffer. But Chelsea fans were very on board with the recruitment 2 months ago when we were winning games, right?
We want our Chelsea. We've got our Chelsea back.
Ran through the stands when we beat Southampton away, when we beat Spurs away. And away fans, I don't care what anybody says, they are your core fan base. They are the people who pay a lot of money to follow the team home and away. In the stands saying, we've got our Chelsea back. So a month and a half, 2 months later, I'm hearing about protests. I'm sorry, but we can't have it both ways. Like Jay said, football's a results-dependent game. And if we were getting results, there wouldn't be protests. And ultimately, when you put all those things together, you've got to look at the manager. Because Liverpool, for example, didn't spend any money in the summer. If they weren't getting results, Liverpool fans would be very, very irate at the lack of business they did. What they did do is when they got a top manager and they're getting results, and all of a sudden FSG geniuses didn't go heavy in the summer, considered spending. It's about results, and your manager gets you results, and unfortunately, our manager's not getting us results.
And also, just on that, you got all over the pitch. You've got quality and experience.
Yes.
Van Dijk,
yes.
Salah, just to name just two there.
Just one more question, Kweku, on this whole sporting directors, this business model that Jace was saying. You know, we all understand that they are going for younger players on smaller salaries, longer contracts. But do we need more football people in there to go? That might not work business-wise. Yeah, I understand that that's the model you want to follow, but you need someone with a football head. Yeah. We know that Todd Bowley and Ben Egbali don't have football heads. I think that's clear to everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Do Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, is that their job to have the football aspect and go, well, actually, I understand that that's the route you want to go down, and we'll go and buy all the potential, we'll go and get some South American wonder kids that are 16 years old, 18 years old. But that doesn't work in football. You can't just put a group of 18-year-olds together, go and play together, and they win. It doesn't work like that.
Football's played on grass, not spreadsheets. And so you do need footballing people. And this is not me saying that those people aren't footballing people. They've made some really astute transfers. Cole Palmer for 40 mil is one of the steals of the century in terms of his actual value right now.
That's like Joe Shields.
That's Joe Shields. But they were employed by Egbali and Bowley. They put them in place. So you've got to give them credit. And we were bemoaning the fact that Caicedo cost so much money, but if you look at it, money well spent because he's a quality and top performer. And so, you do need to strike a balance. Jay's touched on the fact that we've got the youngest squad in the Premier League by a couple of years. That won't run. That won't win you trophies. We have seen it. Like Jay's pointed out, look at Liverpool, Salah, Van Dijk, Trent, Robertson. These are players that have won it all, seen it all, done it all. And I'm not going to quote Alan Hansen saying you're not going to win anything with kids because we've seen it happen before, but it's very, very difficult to win things with kids. And we saw it, right? Take it back to Frank's first season, 1920, core of kids. You had Tammy Abraham, you had Fikayo Tomori, you had Reece James, you had Mason Mount. The kids were great, but they weren't good enough to get over the line. What do we do? In the summer, we bring in experience, we bring in Thiago Silva, we bring in players that have won it, and then what happens? We win the Champions League. It's as simple as that. You need experience to win major trophies. Just
on that one more point, now you've got to move on. This, from what I can see, and I don't know this, but Stuart Winstanley will be directed as to where the club want to go. And from what I understand, Egbali is very much part of that, wants to bring in young players. Todd Bowley, I believe, was in charge of the first transfer window when we bought him. The likes of Aubameyang, Koulibaly, Sterling, vastly experienced players, high wages, big wages. All of those players have gone. I mean, Sterling's on loan, but so there was a transfer shift policy
After.
Midway through this, and I'm under. From what I can see, Stuart Winstanley are under orders to go out and buy the best young talent. Here's the areas, identify the players, and we'll go and buy them.
And like you mentioned, Kweku, 40 million for Cole Palmer is one of the steals of the century, I think. And even if his performances right now have not been perhaps what they were at the start of the season, all of last season, for me, I find it really frustrating, Jace, because I see a lot, there's not one person that's to blame here. It's a collective. Yeah. No one has been up to standard, and that is including Cole Palmer. However, what frustrates me is that throughout the last season and a half, it's been Cole Palmer and only Cole Palmer. Let's be honest. He has dragged us to where we've got to in the table last season and the start of this season. So how about all of the players around him step up? How about that? How about we don't just rely on Cole Palmer? Like you said earlier, if you stop Cole Palmer, you stop Chelsea. But what about the billions of pounds worth of talent around him that we need to rely on when Cole Palmer has an off day, which doesn't come very often, but sometimes it does? Well, how about that?
Yeah, and no one's going to disagree with that. But we're an easy team to play against at the moment, and we're getting easier. I mentioned about stop Cole Palmer, right? So I'll go back to the West Ham game. They had Soucek and they had Soler in the middle of the park, right? I was watching the pair of them. One's looking over his shoulder one way, the other's looking the other. Stop that ball. In the end, Cole had to come a lot deeper in front of them to dictate the play. Yeah. Against Brighton on Saturday evening, as I said, their wide men are Minter and Matoma. They made a back set. They stopped the wide men eventually. By the way, Tarek George, can we have a special mention for him? Yeah. I thought he was really good when he came in. He was the one that actually beat Tarek Lamptey. He actually had a right go at him and got past him a couple of times. But then it feels like that when we can't use the width, and we don't use the width very well, in my opinion, or certainly getting behind the teams enough, and then you stop Cole, who do we become? Who are we? What? Then you look in the creativity. Who is that creativity? Well, it's got to come from Enzo, who's deep. This has got to come from, I think, the manager, I think the tactical side of the game. The players have got to work it out for themselves on the pitch as the game develops. But it's frustrating because, as I said, we're easy to play against at the moment. There is a blueprint how to play against Chelsea, and they're all doing it, and they're all now, we're coming up against this brick wall every game. And Saturday night, certainly the second half, was a real eye-opener for us. We have got to come up with something because Leicester, I saw them against Arsenal at the weekend,
Made it difficult, didn't they?
Made life difficult for them. They're going to do exactly the same. Arsenal got better players than us right now. That's why they are where they are. We've got to find a way, because if Leicester come in and do what Brighton did, then it's going to be a long 90 minutes.
On Cole Palmer, I completely agree in terms of you are now starting to see this criticism of a player that's been amazing for Chelsea over the last 18 months. But heavy is the head that wears the crown. And you see it with Man City, right? Man City aren't playing well. Erling Haaland's the second top goal scorer in the league. All of a sudden, oh my God, he's a League Two player. Even though he is their best player, he is their main goal getter. I've seen it happen to Mo Salah as well when Liverpool aren't performing well. Oh my goodness, why is Mo Salah not doing more, even though he's their top goal scorer? When you are that guy, you are just going to be more open for criticism. Yeah. Not that criticism is right. He still scored 14 league goals this season. The only people who score more goals than him are Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, Chris Wood, and Alexander Isak. These are strikers. These are forwards. These are goal getters. Cole Palmer's not his primary duty, what it is in the Chelsea teams, to get goals, but that's not what we bought him to do. And so I do think some of the criticism's unfair, but it comes with the territory. When you are the best player, we saw with Hazard. When you are the best player, you are going to be criticised the most, even if your performances are better than everybody else's.
Yeah, leave Cole Palmer alone. I've had enough of it. Right, so we have spoken a little bit about, you touched on it earlier, the protests that are going to be happening on the 25th of February at Stamford Bridge. And we've got talkSPORT reporter Ben Jacobs joining us now on Inside Chelsea to tell us a little bit more about this. Because Ben, I'm confused. Anytime I hear about this, I'm like, what are we actually protesting for? So are they against Blue Co? Are they against Clearlake? Can you just tidy up what the Chelsea fans are actually protesting about?
I think they're protesting the fact that their side, since Clearlake Bowley has come in, haven't had Champions League football or won trophies on the men's side. But as you rightly say, a bit more clarity is needed. And I think different members and sections of the fan base will have differing perspectives here. So yesterday we saw big Spurs protests, and they were very much against Daniel Levy specifically, based upon the league position, based upon the funding, based upon the lack of trophies. With Chelsea, it's a bit more complicated because the recruitment model is not necessarily that known to large parts of the fan base. It may take a little bit more time to materialize. And the ownership is so different to that of Roman Abramovich that it feels to me several sections of the Chelsea fan base, and rightly to an extent because they pay hard-earned money, are thinking more about 21 trophies under Roman Abramovich, none yet under Clearlake Bowley on the men's side. The form at the moment has fallen away when it looked like heading into the festive period, they might even be surprise title contenders. And all of that has led to frustration. And the point of the protests, speaking to people in and around the fan base, seems to be to make it clear to this ownership that, number one, they want a Chelsea that will compete for Champions League football now, not next year or the season after. And two, perhaps the purpose of the process is to try and get a reaction, maybe even out of the club, perhaps through engagement with the Chelsea Supporters Trust, to try and get more clarity as to where this model and where this strategy is heading.
Ben, we were just chatting, I don't know how much you heard of the show, about the direction the football club has gone in, and it has to have come from the top down to Wyn Stanley and Stuart, the sporting directors. What is your understanding of the relationship, and whose decision was it to move away from the likes of signing Koulibaly, Aubameyang and Sterling in the first transfer window to now signing 19-year-olds that not many Chelsea fans would have heard of?
Yeah, I think from day one, the approach was always intended to be data-driven and to find value in the market. And we know that Todd Boehly, Jose E. Feliciano, who doesn't get mentioned as much but is equally as important, and Badad Eghbali always felt that the model, as we've seen in some other American sports, could be data-driven, could be youth-driven, and could be value-driven. And value-driven means you either dine off your successes because they become Cole Palmers, or alternatively, you dine off the ones that don't work, financially speaking, because you're still able to sell them for more than you paid. So that sustains the model. So you've got an aspect of multi-club building up to Chelsea and an aspect of the Red Bull where the ones that don't make it are still part of effectively a conveyor belt, and that helps your bottom line. And I think that was the day one strategy. But of course, at that point, maybe unexpectedly, in the 100-day period or so after they took over at super speed, they lost a lot of Abramovich people, and very quickly. And it left them in a little bit of limbo whereby Todd Boehly was interim sporting director. He was heavily reliant on Thomas Tuchel. And in that window, it was chaos because they were learning on the job and they were buying at the whim of what the manager wanted. And again, at the same kind of super speed that saw them take over the club very quickly. Then they got in the sporting directors and it all calmed down a little bit. Not in the market, of course, because they still spent huge amounts of money, but the strategy became a little bit more consistent. So I think Paul Winstanley, Lawrence Stewart are a big part of why Chelsea are buying young, are trying to find players for the now and for the future, and are trying to ensure that even the ones that don't work still make the club money. And all that really changed after that first crazy window that you referenced.
Ben, fans engage in protest to enforce change. And I think if you ask a lot of Chelsea fans, the change they want is a change in ownership. We still hear Chelsea fans sing out Roman Abramovich's name, both home and away. Is there any likelihood that Bluco, Eghbali, Bowley could potentially sell the football club in the coming years?
No, I don't think so. The agreement when they took over the club was there would not be a change of majority owner within 10 years from the date of purchase. So that would take us to the summer of 2032. And then, of course, in 2027, there'll be a change of chair pre-agreed, whereby in the first cycle, if you like, Todd Boehly chose himself as chair. But as we head into the second cycle, you have the ability for Clearlake to put a chair in place. So this is a long-term plan from the ownership. The more pertinent question is, can we refer to them at the moment as a cohesive and collective ownership? Because we know from the back end of last year that Todd Boehly had an inclination to try and buy out Clearlake, and Clearlake have an inclination to either maintain the status quo or buy out Todd Boehly if the opportunity presents itself. And neither party really want to sell. So we have to wait and see how that resolves itself. But nobody, from what I hear, is looking to get out of Chelsea. And regarding the chanting for Roman Abramovich, let's be fair to this ownership as well. There were plenty of chants heading into the festive period of, we've got our Chelsea back. And now, as Chelsea have hit another lull in form, we have the opposite, and it's Roman Abramovich, and it's we want our Chelsea back. So it's actually been, we've got our Chelsea back to we want our Chelsea back in the space of probably only 3 months. And I think from the ownership's point of view, they'll be hoping that they can either finish top 4, top 5, get Champions League football, maybe win a trophy through either the Europa Conference League or the Club World Cup, and calm things down again. Because if it isn't this season that is about the now and about silverware and about Champions League football, as Enzo Maresca suggests, then it has to be next season, because the project will have been ongoing for long enough that it can no longer be about patience or long term. There'll be 4 seasons and 4 years into it. At that point, I think the expectation has to be immediate results. So I still think there's no suggestion of a change of ownership, because this current ownership still feel they need more time to implement their strategy. But when we get into next season, there'll be much more of a sense that results have to come immediately with no excuses.
This Clearlake Blue Co have had a business plan, and that is to buy all those young players on less salaries. Do you think, is there any indication that you believe that they might change that in any way to maybe bring in a little bit more experience?
It was never the case, to my understanding, that anyone over the age of 25 was discounted in previous windows, but it's about finding value in the market. And in fairness to this ownership group, you've got Kendry Paez and Esteval coming in, both with huge reputations. You've got Andre Santos coming back from Strasbourg, who's had a phenomenal first half of the season. In addition to that, Cole Palmer, Mark Cucurella have both proven to be excellent signings. So I get how the fan base may say, yeah, but despite all of that money in several windows, there's no elite goalkeeper in their view, and there's no elite number 9, which may be a bit harsh on Philip Jorgensen or even arguably Rob Sanchez if he can somehow find some form. Mike Penders is coming in, and Nicholas Jackson's numbers are good, even if he hasn't always put away the big chances presented to himself. But it's very easy to sum up this Chelsea project as they've bought a load of kids, they've spent a load of money, they haven't found a goalkeeper, they haven't found a striker, they're going to miss out on Champions League as a result. And in hindsight, who knows, that might be the reality. But I think going forwards, this ownership group will, now they've paved Chelsea's 18 to 23 age category with players, start looking younger towards the academy to find players that are not getting the media headlines but might come through in 5 to 7 years. And then, because they've got the youth that they need in various positions, start to buy less in the market, and the strategy may look more towards a few established stars.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for providing us with some clarity about that situation, because sometimes it just goes straight over my head. But it's been a pleasure to speak to you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I feel like this has been a really downbeat and sad show. So should we talk about something good that's actually got nothing to do with Chelsea right now? Well, it does, because it's Super Frank. It's our greatest ever player. And you mentioned him earlier, and the job he did with Chelsea that 2020 season, which I think is still underrated to this day. Yeah. Still underrated. I know Chelsea fans don't like me talking about former players that used to play for Chelsea, but Frank Lampard, I think we're allowed to talk about Frank Lampard. 6 out of 7 wins at Coventry, Kweku. Scored a 92nd minute winner on the weekend. He's taken them from 17th to 7th. Doesn't it just warm your heart? I feel like I'm like a Chelsea fan / Coventry fan at the minute, because when I saw that goal come through, I was like, oh my God, I was like, God. But people around me like, why do you care? I'm like, because it's Frank Lampard, and I always want to see Frank Lampard do well.
I was worried for Frank going back into the Championship, especially after you've been a Premier League manager, you've dealt with Premier League budgets, you've dealt with Premier League players. Going back down to the Championship, as Frank Lampard, who's only ever been a Premier League player and manager, apart from his stint at Derby, was a little bit worrying. But he's taken to it like a duck to water. He's been incredible there. He's turned things around. The feeling around the club is completely different. And Frank's first stint in the Championship, he relied heavily on his contacts at Chelsea, right? In terms of bringing in a Tomori, bringing in a Mason Mount, players that were too good for the Championship and helped Derby in terms of their promotion push. Unfortunately, they couldn't get promoted, but next season he ended up being Chelsea manager. This time around is different. He's come in halfway through his season. He's had to pick up a group that are on their knees, replacing a very, very popular manager in Mark Robins. And he's come in and he's done an amazing job. And I think if you're looking at the Championship right now, I think they are now favourites to make the playoffs, and you never know what happens when he gets that competition. So I'm really happy to see the job he's done.
It just makes me smile seeing Frank Lampard, and I like Kweku says, I was a little bit worried because I was just thinking maybe he's such a brilliant pundit, Frank Lampard, isn't he? Anytime I watch him on anything, I think he's so good at that, and I was thinking, is a manager, is that for him? And now we've seen him on the touchline at Stamford Bridge twice. Could it potentially be third time lucky?
gosh.
No, I'm not talking about right now. I'm just saying, is there a world in which you would like to see Frank Lampard managing Chelsea once again?
I've seen it twice. I think going back to Frank, first time here, you're absolutely right. What he achieved that season, we had a transfer ban. We lost the best player in Eden Hazard, and he had to bring some of these younger players through, and they shone and they blossomed. And like you said, and a number of those players at Derby, and they clearly, looking up to Frank, I can only imagine what that must have been like for a young player coming to Chelsea's first team. The second time he took time to Chelsea, he was on a hiding to nothing.
He almost took that job out of just like, he felt like, I'm the only person that could probably do this because of my affiliation to the club.
And I think we've got to be grateful that Frank did it, but he was in a hiding to nothing. And even when he took over at Everton, we've seen that football club lurch and lurch. I mean, we've seen Sean Dyche move. Looks like they've got a little bit of stability now under David Moyes, who's obviously vastly experienced manager. I think Frank's found his feet in the right place here, because Coventry is a football club that have come so close over many years. Could have got to an FA Cup final just last year.
Should have.
Millimetres. Could have got promoted a couple of years. Mark Robins done a great job. But he's come in, and there's a crest of a wave. I follow him on social media now. They're loving Frank there at the moment. He has got them in a position where they've snuck him up in on the inside rails. Now, if they get themselves, they won't go up automatically. That's too far. The sides above them, Sheffield United, Leeds, Burnley, they're just too far ahead. But get yourself in those playoff places, and you never know.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great to see. And where Chelsea are right now in terms of the positive position we're at financially is a massive part down to Jody Morris and Frank Lampard. Think about the money that we've got for Mason Mount. Think about the money that we've got for Tammy Abraham and for Kaya Tomori. Like, that was off the back of the work that Frank did. And for ages, we were crying out for a manager to use the Cobham Cubs, to use the youth. And he was the first manager to do it. And I know we only finished fourth that season, got to an FA Cup final and lost. But for me, I always say that's one of my top 3 favourite Chelsea seasons of all time. 04-05, Jose's first year favourite. Obviously, 11-12, Munich, that's my second favourite. And that 19-20 season under Frank, where the fields were amazing. It felt incredible. Unfortunately, COVID curtailed that season. And after that, we weren't really the same side. But the job he did there, the job he's doing at Coventry, he's a footballing man. And it's very easy for Frank Lampard to maybe, after things didn't go well at Chelsea the second time and Everton, to maybe go and take a punditry job or maybe just like duck out of the limelight. But he's gone and taken a job in the Championship and he's doing very, very well.
Yeah, fair play to him. I mean, 2021's got to be up there as well, Kweku. Is that top 4, 2021? Has to be.
Do you know what? 2021...
Lampard was still in charge, 2021.
Kyle Havertz plays for Arsenal. Mason Mount plays for Manchester United. Timo Werner plays for Spurs. Unfortunately, a lot of those players...
but do you not think it makes it better that they've all gone to do what they've done and we managed to win a Champions League with them?
I think go to 2021, even though I was there in 2012. So.
I just throw 2010 in.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing.
9-10.
That season...
We were winning 8-0 every game.
Honestly, that was so much fun.
Oh, that was great. I remember 8-0 on the last day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Against Wigan. Ashley Cole scored. Remember Ashley Cole scoring as well? OK, now we've got to get back to the...
How bad it's got. We're now talking about old seasons.
Taking me back to my best ever season. We've only got a few minutes left, so let's look ahead to the Villa game on the weekend. Jace, how do we get a win in this game?
Look, we went there last year. We knocked them out the FA Cup. We drew 2-2.
Brilliant.
We've already beaten them at home this season. Villa are a funny side. You don't quite know what you're going to get, but what you do know is that they've got a manager that knows how to get results. And they stuttered a little bit. You know, they're way down where I think a lot of Villa fans expected them to be. OK, they've had Champions League football.
I think balancing it is hard.
Yes, no, this is a dangerous game for us. Really dangerous. They've got a number of top-class players in and around that squad. We've got to go there and make ourselves hard to play against. And at the moment, we're too easy. That's my concern. That Villa, I don't know whether you saw the game that they played against West Ham a couple of weeks ago. West Ham got a draw out of it.
Should have won.
Right?
West Ham.
West Ham. But the early exchanges of that game, Villa are all over them.
Yeah.
Could have gone 2 or 3 up. If they do, the game's dead. In the end, West Ham come back into the game and grew into it. So this is a Villa side that have got quality all the way through. They've got goals in them, but they've got a goal back that way as well. I'm going to go for a 1-1 or 2-2. I think this feels like a draw for me.
Both teams to score. I mean, Marcus Rashford, I feel like he loves a goal against Chelsea as well. It would be so typical Marcus Rashford to start his first game for Villa. I know he's come off the bench a couple of times, and he could cause us problems because he is the sort of player that over the years has caused us problems because of the way he plays. Is Mitoma, that sort of quick winger, like going to run in behind, like
Semenyo. For Bournemouth, yeah.
Those players we really struggle against.
Yeah, no, you're right. We should. Now I'm thinking about it, and where Jay said we need 7 points out of those 3 games, I think he's right because Villa have got Liverpool on Wednesday. So we talk about Villa off the back of playing European fixtures. That's basically like playing a European fixture. And Villa's record off the back of European fixtures is very, very poor. They play against the best team in the league midweek. We've had a week to prepare, even longer than a week to prepare because we played on Friday. We should go and get something at Villa Park. And if we don't, and we play poorly, I mentioned it before, the fans have already started to turn, it will turn even more. Because this is a Villa team, like you mentioned, inconsistent. Not the same Villa from last season. We've already beaten them this year. We actually need to go to Villa Park and get at least a point.
When you looked at these 2 performances, Jace, what you're saying, we need to do something different. We need to be hard to play against. What can Enzo Maresca do? What does he need to do for this game against Villa?
Well, the first thing he's got to do is find who's playing up top because that position has become a major, major issue. And Nkunku clearly isn't comfortable up there. He's got to come up with a plan because actually Cole Palmer and him, we played a bit of a 4-4-2 kind of weird thing at the weekend as well. Yeah. Yes, I know that we had Enzo in, but it was a 4-2-3-1, but it was a 4-2, 2 wide men and 2 down the middle.
It was like a 4-2-2-0 because we had no threat up there.
But he's got to come up with a plan, and there's a number of options. I wonder whether playing Neto down the middle might be something you think about because the pacing behind Neto's hold-up play, he's not a natural number 9, but we need to threaten him behind. And we did the early 10 minutes of that game, 15 minutes. I felt we looked a little bit more dangerous. Then it dried up completely. He's got to come up with a plan. That, for me, there. Move the ball quickly. That's always been a feature of us. Move the ball quickly. And can we defensively stay a bit more solid and don't go, because we were all over the place for at least 2 of their goals at the weekend.
I think back to a player like Diogo Jota. When he was at Wolves, he played out wide. And now at Liverpool, he's viewed as being not a number 9, but almost like a 9.5. So he plays down the middle. Yeah. And you look at Pedro Neto and the attributes that he exhibits, there's worse things in the world than playing him down the middle. Then Nkunku doesn't want to make the runs in behind. At least Neto's making those runs and stretching the pitch. So I actually don't hate that.
Yes, hopefully Enzo Maresca can come up with a plan. Right, that is it for another episode of Inside Chelsea. We'll be back after the Villa game. I'm hoping it's going to get more positive from here on out because I don't want to do any more shows like this one where we're just talking about the bad things. As always, if you want to get involved, post your comments and we'll do our very best to answer them. Thank you for your company. Jason, Kweku, thank you as always. We will see you next time here on Inside Chelsea. Up the Chels.
Up the Chels.